Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of abuse and domestic violence, teen pregnancy, grief, imposter syndrome, menopause, and mental health. Our goal is to share real life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion. Welcome back, everybody, to Radiant Resilience. I am so excited for this conversation today. I have Terri Kellums. She is a successful business owner, a seasoned corporate leader, podcast host, certified life coach, trainer, and speaker with the John Maxwell Group, and now author of her new book that is coming out soon, I think. Yeah. Inspired by her journey as a corporate leader, she wrote Develop Your Leadership Superpowers to share the knowledge and insights gained over the years. As someone who has always seeking to improve her own leadership skills, she understands the challenges and opportunities that leaders face. She resides in Southern Arizona with her husband and their two fur babies. When they are not working on their home they are currently building, you can find them enjoying time with friends and family and always looking for their next adventure and travel. Ooh, that might be a topic we have to touch on a little bit too, because my husband and I love to travel.
Oh,
But
great.
yeah, anyways, welcome, Terri. How
Thank
are
you. Thank you
you?
so much for having me. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. Terri and I were chit-chatting a little bit before we started recording, and I think we're going to start with a little bit of her background and her life story and what led her into what she does now. Terri, why don't you go ahead and start from wherever you feel like your journey
All
began?
right. All right, I will. Okay, so I think my story is a little bit different than what most people that write leadership development books might have. I actually got pregnant as a teenager. I lived in an abusive home, and in order to escape, we decided at our very young age that the wisest thing to do was for me to get pregnant so I could escape that whole situation. And yeah,
You got pregnant to escape an abusive family situation?
yeah, I had a baby when I was 16.
And that was the only way you felt like you could get out?
Yeah, the brain at that age isn't super developed, but
Mhm.
but yeah, it was a situation where I wasn't being abused, my mom was being abused, and I just didn't see a way out of it. I didn't see a way out of it. I was dating a boy that I had been with for a little while, and he started getting a feel for what was going on in my home life, which I would say the majority of my friends and people in our life did not know what was going on in our household.
Mm.
They had no idea. And I don't think that's that uncommon. I think most people try to hide the abuse. They try to hide because as a young female, I thought I can't really let people know because then they would really like me.
Mm.
If people really knew what was going on in my household, they might not like me, which is just it's just really immature thinking.
Yeah, but as a child, like, how are you supposed to think any other way?
So
Oh,
I hid a lot of that, and I learned to put up this very tough armor and a shield. Brene Brown would probably call it a shield, where I just didn't let people close to me. I didn't let them know that side of me. And the irony, which I would find out years later, and I'd love to tell you about that part of the story, the irony of that whole thing is when you grow up in an abusive home like that and you don't feel protected and you don't necessarily feel super loved, you desire that
yeah.
to feel, you want to feel that, but you've built this shield around you
Mm.
so high and so strong that people can't really get close to you because they don't really know you because you're not
Mm.
really vulnerable.
Yeah.
But this particular boy, I don't even know how he ended up seeing through this. This was like years ago. I think my oldest daughter is 39.
Mhm.
So that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I did end up getting pregnant, having this beautiful baby girl who I loved more than anything, and poured every single ounce of love I had into that child. My stepfather did kick me out when the baby was 3 days old. So forced the whole situation at a very rapid speed.
Why would he do that then? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
oh,
so my boyfriend, who then became my husband at some point, he already lived on his own, and I just moved in with him. And he had his own set of issues. So, two people coming together at a very young age, that he grew up seeing infidelity and abuse, and I grew up seeing abuse. And it was just a recipe for disaster. Fast forward, probably when my daughter was about, let's see, she was going to turn 3. It was her 3rd birthday. I had enlisted in the military, go into the reserves because I thought I'm going to get an education, not
mm,
have married. I need to be able to support my child. She's the most important thing in my life. I'm going to get an education. I'll have to sacrifice. I think boot camp was like 8 weeks. I would have had to be away from my daughter.
oh yeah.
And so the center, which they call the MEP Center, where you go to get processed to get enlisted, was like I believe a 3-hour drive from where we lived. I cried the whole way there. It was her birthday. It was her 3rd birthday.
Oh,
I cried the whole way there. And routinely, they run pregnancy tests on all women who are getting ready to go into boot camp. And guess what? I was pregnant.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So there goes my plan. There goes my
Oh.
whole plan to get an education so that I could escape and just become an independent woman and take care of myself. And I honestly was just thrown into a tailspin.
And you
I
were
think,
like, that was at 19 then, if you had your daughter at 16?
yep, I was
Oh my
19.
gosh. Wow.
Yep. And fast forward a few months later, I think it was around Thanksgiving, because I found out August 26th. I think it was Thanksgiving, went in for my ultrasound and found out I was having twins.
Oh my gosh. What?
Yeah. At this point, unhappily married or not, you're not going anywhere. You're gonna stick it. You're gonna stick through with it, right?
Three babies at
3 babies.
19. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That had to be so challenging. 3 babies for someone in their 30s like that is challenging. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine at 19 what was going through your head.
Yeah. And we were in the military, so we were stationed in Virginia, and I was from Illinois. So we had no family or friends to support us. It was, but you know what I always say when I look back at it? I didn't know I couldn't do it. No one told me I couldn't do it. So I just pushed forward. And
What else are you going to do? You can't not do it for those
right.
babies' sake.
Yeah. And you just become very routine. You
Yeah.
learn to develop a lot of routines, and and I think a lot of women do this. So I know there's some woman listening to this and she's going to relate to this. You just turn yourself off, like the woman self, and you turn on the mom self,
Mhm.
and you just do what you got to do because you've got these 3 beautiful children that just need you to take care of them and love them.
Yeah.
And it's not ideal for a child to be grown into a household where the parents aren't really in love, but we weren't screaming, fighting all the time. We just didn't know how to be married. We didn't know
Yeah.
how to have adult relationships. But he was a very good, helpful co-partner. He helped
That's
me
good.
and all that. So that part was really good. But the flip side of that was I had spent my whole childhood feeling like I wasn't loved. So I poured every ounce of love I had in my body into these little humans. And so I think it could have been worse.
Yeah.
And I know that there are worse stories out there for sure. Excuse me, it's allergy season here in
Oh.
Arizona. But so I think I developed at a very young age this attitude and this mindset that there's always a way.
Mm.
There's always a way. Fast forward a few years, we get out of the military, we move back to the Midwest, and I finally just had to leave. I think they were 3 when
Oh,
I finally
wow.
marriage, and just did what I had to do. I learned some office skills. I started working in the insurance industry and moved into different roles where I just kept, I was like a sponge, Tawny. If I was in a department and they said, we need someone to learn how to do this, I was the first one to raise my hand. I'm like, I'm going to learn everything they teach me because I can take that with me. No one can take it away from me once I know it.
Yeah.
And so I would just do that and do that. And as crazy as it sounds, I remarried and had another child. I was 30 when my youngest was born. And I decided that we were going to move to Arizona. I was tired of the cold weather in the Midwest. I wanted sunshine and ended up working for this wonderful man, a leader, an amazing leader who I'm still friends with today. And that was, gosh, in 2006. I worked for him in his insurance office, and he was a newer agent. And I just soaked up everything he had to teach me like a sponge. And one day he said to me, Terri, you don't belong being my office assistant. You should be an agent. You should have your own agency. And so he helped me. Yeah, he helped me with that process. I moved back to Illinois because the guy who was in charge, he basically said, if you really want to be successful at this, you need to be in a place where you know more people. It's all about a center of influence type thing.
Yeah.
And so I moved back to Illinois. I started my agency and realized pretty quickly that I still didn't know how to be married.
Oh, no.
Because the moment I started getting successful, my youngest daughter's father wasn't the most ambitious man. He was a good dad, I'll give him that, but he wasn't the most ambitious man. And then he just didn't want to work anymore.
Oh.
And I was like, wait a minute, I can't do this. I need someone who wants to move ahead and not go backwards or stay stuck where you're at. Like for me, it's always been about like continuing to move forward.
Yeah.
You know, like all that time, you want to teach me something, I'm going to learn. I can take it with me. I can grow. I can keep growing from that. But ultimately, him and I divorced, and I ended up needing more benefits than what I could have at owning my own insurance office. So I went to work on the corporate side.
Okay.
So living here in Arizona, I was in Phoenix, became a leader in our new care center that we had just started, worked my way up, became the operations manager in the care center. And for a person who had grown up the way I did and just basically clawed and scratched my way to get anywhere in life, like amazingly, like being a leader came so naturally to me because I had so much compassion for the people. And I had so much of a desire to also help them realize their best self. And so just this whole leadership was just like I blossomed. I just became a whole new, much more confident, self-assured. And by this time I'm like probably 40. So, naturally, I hope most women really continue to get more confident, come into their own. And we always say this, like you learn to find your voice, right?
Yeah. It's a lot easier to learn to find your voice these days as women. Sure. It's getting better. But yeah, I think I'm 36 currently. And so I think I've learned so much just in my 6 years of being in my 30s. Like, I feel like 30 to 40 is such a huge growth period, at least for me. I hope for a lot of women out there. And so I feel like by the time you get to 40, you've lived a lot of life at that point and had a lot of maybe hard lessons and hard things that have shaped you, which is difficult, but at the same time, that is a lot of what makes us who we are. Yeah, I think we grow a lot by 40 for sure. Most women.
Absolutely. And I've asked this question, and I think it's a really interesting one for anyone to reflect on is, are we ever really able to develop compassion if we've never suffered any or ain't gone through anything to develop that resilience? I don't know if that's possible. If your whole life is just cushy, like, do you ever really develop that?
I don't know. Because I will say, when I look back into my 20s, I also think you're young and immature at that point, but there were a lot of things I didn't understand at all. And with what other people were going through or older people than me that had gone through. And I think if you're aware of the fact that you've lived a cushy life and never struggled or anything like that, and then maybe you can have a little bit more compassion. But I know you've listened to a little bit of my podcast episodes, but I've struggled with infertility, and I know that people try really hard to be compassionate and understanding, but I just don't think they really know until they've gone through something similar and had those similar grief feelings and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you're totally right on that. Spot on. It's unfortunately, I wish we didn't have to go through the hard stuff, but I think we do. It makes us better people in the end.
I'm sorry that you struggle with that, because I know when I struggled with it with my youngest daughter, you feel like your body's betraying you.
Yeah.
You feel like this is what I'm supposed to be able to do. Why can't I just do this thing I kind of have this thing. So I'm very sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a rough journey, but we're getting through it. So
One of my twins is actually going through that right now, and she's going
oh,
through IVF.
oh yeah.
But you're
Well,
right. It's really tough, and it's tough to not to know what questions to ask and when to like back off and let that person that's suffering come to you. And
mhm.
yeah, it's a really tough place. It's a really tough place to be.
Yeah, and it doesn't, I don't know. I know a lot of people that have eventually had success with IVF or whatever they ended
Mhm.
up doing. And they say even still they struggle. It doesn't ever fully, the feelings don't ever fully go away. So even if you get your happy ending, I think a lot of the times we think, oh gosh, if I could just have the baby, then all of these icky feelings will go away. And they manifest in different ways after that. But yeah, it's a struggle. If she does ever need somebody to talk to,
Let her know.
I would be happy to be a support because it can feel so lonely sometimes too, especially if you're in a community of everyone around you that's just popping out babies like it's no big
Yeah,
deal. So
yeah. And I don't think a lot of people had compassion for me because I already had 3 kids. I was the woman who got pregnant while on birth control pills with twins. So
yeah.
I don't think a lot of people thought, well, she's already got 3. Like, why does she even need one more?
Yeah, but it's also there is such a thing as I hear it mostly referred to as secondary infertility. I guess yours was, I don't know what yours would be called since it was the fourth. But a lot of the times it's people who didn't have any problems getting pregnant with the first, but then can't seem to get pregnant with the second
Yeah,
and really struggle with it. And I think I have people that are like, I didn't struggle like you did. I understand, but I don't fully. And I'm like, no, but I think anybody that had to try for more than a few months and actually put the effort forth and had those few months of failures they know. Because if you
yeah,
go over that, or if you go through that over and over and over, then they can have compassion for that, even though that's not necessarily their story, but they got a taste of what that felt like. I
yeah.
try to give those people a little bit of grace because they're like, well, I didn't go through what you went through. I'm like, no, but you get it. Multiply that times like 20 and more, and then you get it.
Yeah, and I think we have to be really careful not to fall into that trap of comparative suffering because
Oh, yeah.
it's like maybe you didn't go through the story I just told, but maybe you had some other kind. We're not going to escape life without trauma. It,
Yeah.
it happens to all of us. It's
Yeah.
just the level of trauma, but it doesn't mean that you don't give the people the opportunity to show you that empathy and compassion just because your trauma wasn't as bad as their trauma. Be careful with that trap. And I
I
think a
know.
lot of people fall into that trap.
It's so hard not to comparison in general, right?
Yeah,
Like comparing
for
your
sure.
life to someone else's life in general, and especially with social media these days, it's so hard to not
Oh,
fall into the comparison trap of oh my God, this person's life looks so fabulous and rich and wild. I don't know, like so intriguing. And
glamour.
then you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I think that's a lot of why I started this podcast, is because I think we do live in a world with social media where people pretend like they're living these perfect lives. And I don't think anybody actually is.
Yeah. How long have you been doing the podcast? I don't think I went back real super far. I think I saw 33 episodes or more.
Yeah, I actually was just looking at it the other day. I think I have somewhere in the 30s episodes. And then I think my first one came out April 1st, I think was my first episode. So not very long, but
Uh,
I've been really loving it. So,
but
uh,
it's a fun journey.
yeah.
I loved doing the podcast. I think I started mine because I thought, let me just back up a minute. I feel like my mom, if you just go back to the part where she was the abused one in our abusive household, I think she spent her whole life just trying to survive and not thrive.
Mhm.
So I eventually was in that leadership role and was very happy at that insurance company. Loved the people I worked with. Everything about my life was amazing. I met my now husband, and he used to tell me all the time, stop smiling so much. I was so happy. And then we went through a reorg in our area, and corporate life is a bitch. I can swear, right? I think I heard you swear.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Corporate life is a bitch. And I wish that women all wanted to support each other. But unfortunately, like you're going to run into those who just want to backstab you and undermine you every step of the way. And
Mhm.
so I had a woman like that. She was on our team. So I was an operations manager. There were 5 operations managers. We all did the same job, but we focused on different areas of the call center. And the boss kind of favored her. And when she started going through some marital problems, I'm just going to say this in front of the whole world right now. I think he arranged this whole thing. I'm probably going to get in trouble at some point for saying this. I think he
We
arranged
won't
this.
name names. So
Yeah.
you're good.
Just to put her in a position where she could get the job she wanted, because we were all having to like reapply for our jobs. And I think the deck was stacked against me. And we just happened to be in Wisconsin for my daughter's wedding. We're staying at this lake house. It's the first time, like, we have a blended family. So it's the first time his kids and my kids are all together in the same spot. And it's just ideal. Like, everything's happy. I'm seeing friends, like, everything's great. And I get this call that I did not get to keep my same job.
Oh,
I was devastated. I was so devastated. And my husband is mostly understanding as much as a man can be, but I felt like someone just robbed me of my joy in life. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, this team I've developed. When I started in that Phoenix Care Center, it was a brand new care center, and there was like, I think there was 21 of us that all started together. We were so bonded like a family because nobody knew what they were doing. Like, I had worked for an agent. I ran my own insurance company. I had trained my own staff people. I did not know how to work in a call center. None of us did. Like, we all had experience of some sort, but so we relied on each other. So the ones that didn't have any insurance experience relied on those of us who did, and we mentored them, just wanted them to succeed and wanted our whole little area to succeed. So we were this like tight knit group. And then as I moved up, I promoted managers from that team, and we hired more people, and it just was, we were so close. It's really hard to imagine you could be that close with people that you worked with, but I did. And I was called motherly. And it wasn't in a nice way. I was motherly.
Okay, you were.
Yeah, I just wanted them to be happy. I loved making the work environment a great place to come to. And we played lots of games, and we did lots of fun sales contests. And coming to work we would do, so this is just a silly story. We would do team engagement things, and I would ask my managers to all come up with their own ideas of what team engagement looked like. And nobody wants to work on a Saturday morning. Us 9-to-5ers, we just want to put in our Monday through Friday. We don't want to work on Saturday. But in the insurance business, in a call center, you want to be able to call your insurance company whenever you have an issue. So we're open. And so one of the team managers came with the idea of like a throwback, and he'd bring in like cereal, and then in our break room, we would turn cartoons on.
Oh, I love that.
Just silly stuff to make it a good place to come to be every day. And so losing that was so hard.
So did they fire you, or were they offering you a different position?
I had to move into a different position, which was fine, but it wasn't my strength. It wasn't my skill set. And so I trudged along for a while, and I was like, no, this isn't working for me. So I applied for a job on there's two sides. There's always the support side and the operations side. So I was on operations. I went over to the support side and did something else I loved. I loved training people. I would be up in front of the classroom, and I would see, and I had all this knowledge in my head of insurance. Like, it's all boring. Nobody really wants to know that stuff. I would be up in front of the classroom, and I'd have these new people in there, and I see the sheer terror on their face of trying to understand like limits of liability, and how important it is to accurately discuss some of these coverages with our customers so that they were empowered to make their own decisions. I would see this look on their face like, holy shit. And it would make me calm. And I would then just feel like I would slow things down, slow the pace of the room down, and just really start getting into some storytelling type teaching and really just help them bring this concept home. We would do role plays, and we would tell stories. And so I loved that too. But when they did another reorg and brought that woman over to my side, I was like, I think it's time for me to go. And they offered me a very lovely severance package. I was commuting an hour. I heard you talk about commuting, your 40-minute commute, or was it your friend that was saying the 40-minute commute?
No, I have the 40-minute commute. Yeah.
Mine was an hour and a half each way.
Oh, that's a big commute.
Yeah. I was like, 40 minutes I might have been able to handle. But at the time, like an hour and a half in Phoenix traffic, I was like, went to my husband. I'm like, okay, these are my choices. I can reapply for my job again, go through all that craziness, or they're offering me this really nice severance package, and I get to take my retirement plan with me, and I can start over and do something else and not have that commute every day. And it was a tough choice, but I left. I left a job I once loved, a company that I loved working for, I believed in the way that they approached insurance and approached employment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a really tough decision to leave that. And I know that you did an episode on grief. I did a whole series on grief when I did my podcast because, excuse me, my mouth gets dry. I talk so much.
No worries. You're good. You're good.
I realize that people don't always understand that grief isn't just about the loss of a loved one.
Yes. There's so many levels of grief.
It goes so deep, right? It's like breast cancer has grief, losing a job has grief. And I didn't know that I was grieving. I didn't know. So I left this job, didn't really have a solid plan, but I did have a really nice severance package.
Okay.
So I had the luxury of time to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was floundering like every day. And I remember a gentleman that I was friends with in the care center. He worked in the claims area. He said to me, Terri, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. I was like, great. I'd love to hear it. He says, you need to wake up every day and have a plan and a purpose for that day.
Yes. Yes.
And I was like, okay. I'm thinking, I've worked my whole life. I started working when I was like 15 years old at a restaurant, being a bus girl. Like, I've been a parent my whole life. I think I could just enjoy some time off and do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he was so right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I've been experiencing that with I don't know if my mother-in-law will listen to this, but my in-laws retired. We sold a restaurant that we owned with them a few years ago. And I think it was the same kind of thing. First, it was like, oh, yay, we're finally retired. And I think we have this weird perspective on retirement on how now I don't have to do anything. But then after a little while, it starts to become not great. And I could see in my mother-in-law that her mental health wasn't doing so great with that. And I think it's just not having a purpose to the day, not having, especially when that's what you've done your whole life is work or be a parent or whatever. And now all of a sudden you're not a parent and you're not working. And what are you doing? So
and I think it's more so true if your role has been like someone who added value to someone's life, like maybe if you were like a nurse or a teacher,
yeah,
and you felt like every day when you went to work, you were making a difference in some way, even if it was a small way, that's even tougher because then when you wake up every day, you're like, I'm supposed to be helping people. Where are the people I'm supposed to be helping? And all of our children they were almost grown adults at this time. I think the youngest was Brian's son was a junior, I believe, in high school at the time. And my youngest daughter was off to college. So I'm almost an empty nester at this point. Like I don't have young kids at home to take care of. We did have a little bit bigger house than I was comfortable cleaning every day, but cleaning house can only get you through. So it took me a bit. And then my best friend, who we call each other soul sisters, lives back in Illinois. And I called her one day and I said, hey, I need to talk. I think I'm grieving. And she goes, duh. I mean, to her, she had listened to me for months and months. And because she's a mental health professional, she already knew.
You're like, why didn't you tell me that sooner?
This would have helped if you would have told me this a little bit sooner, but we just laughed about it. And I said, I got to do something. I'm not done yet. I'm too young to be done. And so her and I just started brainstorming, and I don't remember how long the process took, but I don't know. Are you familiar with John Maxwell at all?
Yes.
Okay. So he has a leadership program where you can go and become a certified speaker, trainer, and coach. And she sends me the information one day and she says, what do you think about this? And I was like, oh my God, that's right up my alley. I'm like, yeah. And she goes, I want to do it with you.
Oh, fun.
So we did it. We did it together. At the end of it, you all go to Florida. You go to this big conference. It's amazing. You get to meet John Maxwell, which was pretty cool. I have a picture. Yeah, all his leadership team. It was an incredible experience. We sat down and we're like, you probably have a girlfriend like this, but like you have a girlfriend that you don't get to see a lot. But then when you are together, you're just like, blah, blah, blah,
oh, yeah. Yes, for sure.
And so I don't remember how many days we were in Florida, probably 4 or 5, and just constantly like pouring into each other and like just encouraging each other. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? And we sat on this park bench one of the last days and we recorded this video and we put it on Facebook, and we're like, we just want to help people tell their story because we think there's so much power in your story. And that's where we left it. We didn't really know what to do from there.
Okay.
And so while all this is happening, my husband is wanting to take a job transfer to another part of Arizona.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't have a job and I can do coaching from anywhere. So yeah, let's do it. Let's go. And so we moved to this little town in 2019. Like you picture the state of Arizona where it meets Nevada and Utah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
We lived up in that area, just a tiny little town in the middle of nowhere. And I was so floundering. I was like, okay, I have all this knowledge now. I can go into companies because the training was probably more geared towards business
Okay.
than it was any other kind of life coaching. But I was floundering because I was like, I had a lot of time in that world. I had a lot of time in that corporate world. I'm sure I could add value to somebody at some point, but I felt so uneasy about it. I just felt, oh, this isn't really it. This isn't really it. And my mom had tried to commit suicide and she survived, but she cracked a vertebrae in her spine and was in constant pain. So she was seeing like a pain management doctor or whatever. And anyway, she ended up passing away. And I never really dealt with, thank you. I never really knew how to deal with that grief. So I just kind of sit down. Then I had the grief from losing my job, or I didn't lose it, walking away from it.
Oh, yeah.
Then we moved to this little town with no family, friends, support. And I'm going like through the worst of perimenopause.
Oh no, and that's going to make your emotions even worse.
Yeah. And then shortly after that, COVID hits and we're all stuck in our, so it was like the perfect storm. But at some point during that, and I think it was before COVID actually, I decided I needed to clear my head. I need to go away. I need to be by myself. And I told my husband, I'm going to drive cross country. My oldest 3 daughters lived in Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm like 2.5, 3 days from Kansas City, Missouri. I'm like, I'm going to take a road trip by myself and just have some time to think. And he's very supportive. He said, yeah, do what you got to do. Go visit your kids. That's a great idea. Because I was feeling so down. And get in the car and I'd load myself up with like podcasts and audiobooks that I'm going to listen to. And I'm in the car probably, I don't know, maybe 6-7 hours at this point. And I'm listening to Brene Brown's book. Oh gosh, it just flew out of my head which one it was. It'll come back.
Brene Brown. She's so inspiring.
Yeah. But in her book, so back to what I was talking about earlier, where when you build up that shield and you have so much armor and you don't let people close to you. And so here I am suffering in the worst way, probably, and can't really talk to anybody about it because I don't want anybody to see me as weak.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because the whole time when I'm a young mom with these 3 little kids, I thought, this is what the story I told myself, wouldn't everybody just love to see me fail? I don't know why I thought that, but I thought, I can't show them that I'm failing in any way in life. And so I'd be in the grocery store. I'd have 3 little kids in the cart behind me, pushing a cart of groceries in front of me. And people were kind and they would say, can I help you? No. No, I don't need anybody's help. I can do this all by myself. And I don't think that I was unfriendly or unwilling to help people. I just didn't want them to help me.
Yeah. I didn't want that as a weakness.
I saw it as a weakness. So I'm listening to Brene Brown. She's talking about the power of vulnerability and how if we don't be vulnerable to people and let them see us, we can never really have the close relationships in life that we want with people. I had to pull over the side of the road because I'm bawling and I never cry. I'm just bawling my eyes out,
I have recognized in myself that I have a really hard time having close friendships with people who are not real, open, vulnerable with me. I had a friend a while back who just constantly tried to pretend like her life was totally fine. Everything was great. And I found out before she did that her marriage was falling apart.
Oh God.
And so and I was just like so frustrated because we were supposed to be best friends. And I was like, why are you not opening up to me about this? Why are you not telling me about this? I don't know how to be a friend to somebody who is just surface level. We can be acquaintances, we can be friends, but if it's not a deeper conversation and you're not going to be real with me and honest with me. And not that everybody needs to share their dirty laundry, but there is something for sure in connection there that if you're not honest about your life and the way it is and the way it looks, then I don't know. I think it's very difficult to connect with people that way. So I very much agree with that statement about being vulnerable with others.
Yeah. I had a friend I was really close to. We were like sisters. And we would go out to happy hour at least once a month. And so the only time I could ever really be vulnerable was like halfway into the glass number 2 of wine. My defenses are down and my lips are starting to get looser. And I said something to her during that happy hour, and she sat back, like physically sat back in her chair. Because you know how when you're at happy hour and you're the conversations, and she sat back in her chair. I'll never forget this. I remember where we were at and everything. And she goes, you know what? No one would ever realize how insecure you can be unless they really get to know you. And I was like, unless you're someone's watching this on video, like I'm like got this shocked look on my face, like, what the hell? Like, you're supposed to be my friend. Now you're
Oh, yeah.
you know? But I don't even remember how I responded to her, but it probably wasn't negatively because I loved her and I knew she loved me, and it was not, did not mean to hurt me, but I carried that with me for a long time because the episode in the car listening to Brene Brown didn't happen for a few years after that.
Yeah. And I think you had already trained yourself from a young age, because you were hiding what was going on in your household, to not share that vulnerability. Because, I mean, you said you didn't think people would like you very much if they knew what was going on in your house, even though none of that was your fault.
But you feel like people, you get the sense, and social media makes this really a lot worse, that people really don't want to know the bad stuff. They only want to know the good stuff.
That's what, with going back to my infertility stuff, a lot of people want to see the happy ending. And when I talk about the fact that I didn't get my happy ending, like, it makes people uncomfortable.
It does. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm guilty of it too. I only really want to watch movies and read books with happy endings. I want to be happy.
That's true. That's true. But we can get that from books, right? And movies. Yeah. That's fine. I think that's fine. It's just not always real life. But
the Pretty Woman movie. Everybody wants the Pretty Woman thing. Like at the end, she's glamorous, she gets the guy, whatever. That's what we really want to see.
But also maybe we need to reframe it, right? Because I didn't get my happy ending in the sense that I thought I wanted it and thought I did want it, but in the way that I thought I would. But I'm hoping there's a happy ending in a different way. One of my friends I've had on here who has also been through infertility. I don't know if you've listened to any of my Carrie Hoskins episodes, but she very much on social media touts the child-free, not by choice, but life. But she is perfectly happy and living her best life and doing all the things she wants to do. And so it was just a different way of looking at her happy ending. It wasn't exactly the way she planned it to be, but it worked out in the end. So maybe we just need to reframe people's happy endings in our brains.
I love that. It's so true. But once it's not like you get, I hate to say knowledge is power, because it's not true. It's not true. Mm-hmm. Only the application of knowledge is power. I know now that I need to be more vulnerable if I want to have these close relationships that I want to have, because I'm living in a new place and I'm feeling lonely and I want to make friends. So the application didn't come for quite a while after the knowledge.
Okay, so you had that epiphany in the car, you pulled over, you cried, but it took a while to figure out how to apply it to your life.
Yeah, went to visit my daughters, enjoyed my time with them, came back, still floundering. And one of the things I realized about the vulnerability and the stuffing of grieving for my mom was, I always say you need to go back and reparent the child version of yourself that you didn't. I realized that I needed to forgive my mom. For my childhood and a lot of the things that happened along the way, in the instances where I didn't feel like I was being protected or I was being made to feel like I was important as her child. And that's a really tough thing. That's a tough thing. And I hope my kids don't listen to this, because that would be really tough for them to hear, because she was a good grandma. She was the best she could be given the circumstances. Like I said, she was always trying to survive, not thrive. I remember watching her go through menopause, and it was tough because she was so depressed. Like I said, she tried to commit suicide, but she also had some alcohol dependency issues. And it was really tough watching this woman struggle through this. And she she had no sense of vulnerability. She could not share
Mhm.
any of that stuff with me and my sisters. And so there was always just this kind of, I love you. I appreciate you in my life, Mom, but like there's just something missing here. There's just like a
Yeah.
like a bridge that has no way to cross. I don't know how to get to you. And so during that time, I was able to go, oh God, I need to forgive my mom. That's like probably one of the first steps in this healing is to forgive her. And then during working on that, I was like, oh my God, I want to work with women. I
Mm.
want to help women. And it was just like this huge moment where I'm like, okay, I don't really want to go into businesses and coach leaders that are struggling. I want to help women who are struggling.
Mm.
I want to help women who don't. So this will happen. Like I said to you earlier in the conversation, like you just put on that mom persona and the Terri, the Tawny, the millions of women out there, we set ourselves on the side. And for a lot of women, they don't know how to pick it back up.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a hairdresser. And so I've talked, and I've been doing it for 20 years, and I've talked to so many women over the years in different walks of life. And I've seen so many lose themselves specifically in motherhood. And some crawl out of it after a few years once their kids are a little bit older and a little bit more independent. Some never do. And then when they hit that 18 and they're moving out of the house, it's a lot more traumatic than it would be otherwise. And yeah, it's tough to watch sometimes. Mhm.
Yeah. It's exactly what you said. Sometimes they don't remember to have a life for themselves. So when
Yeah.
that leaves home, they're devastated. They
Mhm.
just like their whole life has been about that. And then
And
there's the
as
other
it should be to a point, right? Like
right.
you do need to care for these little humans, and you need to raise them into good adults, and you need to support them and love them and all the things. But I do think I'm speaking as somebody that doesn't have firsthand experience, but I think it's important to hold on to a piece of yourself through that as much as you
Yeah.
can.
And so for the women who don't know how to pick themselves back up, like who don't know how to go, okay, I used to love this. I used to love this. They just feel so lost. They feel so
Mhm.
unfulfilled. They feel like, what the hell is the next part of my life supposed to look
It's
like?
scary.
And just like I said with my friend who, when I was leaving the call center, said, Terri, you need to wake up every day and have a purpose. You need to have a
Mhm.
thing to look forward to know you have to do every day. And it can't just be house cleaning, it's
Right.
got to be
That's
something
not a
more.
purpose.
I feel like women are, and this is just my heart, like, and
Mm.
why I felt so like great about my decision to focus on coaching women. I'm like, there's so much complexity in us. There's so much
Yeah.
we have to offer. We're so multifaceted. I think we're just fascinating creatures. And I'm not taking anything away from the men. My husband is a great man. He's great with his kids. He's a wonderful friend. He's a wonderful grandson. There's so many wonderful things about him. But we're just amazing. And I want to see women thrive
Mm. And
and
I
not.
think we all get stuck in the societal norms too, right? We've been conditioned to think a certain way, and that we're supposed to stay home. We're supposed to take care of the children. We're not supposed to want to be independent. That has been ingrained in us for generations. And to break, we are coming out of that. And women have come so far in the last 20, 30, 40 years, but we still have a lot of that conditioning stuck in our brains. And to break that conditioning, and I think a lot of women feel guilty for that, I think, and berate themselves a little bit more. Oh, I'm not supposed to want that. I'm not supposed to want to do that. I'm not supposed to be independent or whatever. And like I said, it is changing, but I think we still have so much further to go. And to break some of that conditioning in our brains is huge. So I love that you're helping women do that.
So, in order to reach even more women, then beyond the scope of being able to just coach women, I decided to start the podcast.
Okay.
I wanted to bring fresh information and resources. And I think you might agree with this on the podcast. Sometimes you're going to have a guest and they're going to make you grow. And that
Yes.
was never the intention. Like the intention was, I'm going to bring this person on the podcast. And so they can teach my audience and give this resource to my audience. And in the practice of that, you end up growing so much yourself. You're
I've
like,
learned
oh,
so much from my guests. So
yeah.
much. I love it. Hmm.
And you really have to keep an open mind because you're not going to agree with everything everybody
Yeah.
says. And you
Yeah.
shouldn't. You
Yeah.
should have multiple opinions on your podcast to make it fair for everybody, but I would learn so much from, and I met people from, I have people that I'm friends with on Instagram from Spain and from Ireland. And I met all these wonderful people. The last season of the podcast I did with my friend that I call my soul sister. And we really wanted to spend a lot of time focusing on relationships for that particular season. And it was a great experience to do that with your best friend. And we don't always see things exactly the same way because we just come from different backgrounds. She's a professor at a college and she's a mental health professional. She counsels couples for the most part, I believe. And I'm a coach and she's a coach. So we're like bringing all this perspective to this podcast. And but one of the things that she brought out in me in our time together was how much I missed my leadership stuff.
Okay.
And so this is where this brings me to the book. So I'm like, again, that feeling of I'm not done. Like there's still, and I hope that every person in your audience, I don't know what your main age range is, but I hope every woman that's listening to this realizes you don't have to be done when you're 40. You don't have to be done when you're 50. You don't have to be done when you're 60. As long as there's still passion in you and there's still something that you want to bring forward, I feel like you almost have an obligation to bring your gifts to the world.
Yes.
And I still had so much, like when I would get into conversations with her, because she also does leadership development in her college environment, when we would get into these talks and we would go on our annual girls trip. And like I said, we'd see each other once a year and we would just be like pouring into each other and having these wonderful conversations. And I was like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book and I'm going to just pour into whoever happens to pick up a copy of this book, like the things that I believe are really important in a leadership role, the things that, like I said to you earlier, when I just realized that it was something that just came so naturally to me, considering my background and all my experiences, it was a shock to me that I just was naturally that good with people. I wanted to put that into a book and help people. So that brings me to my book, which is called Develop Your Leadership Superpowers. And I'd like to offer your readers an opportunity. I have some stuff out there on social media that the first 100 people sign up to get a free copy of my book will also leave me a fair and honest review on Amazon. I am developing a little companion guide and I'd like to offer it to your readers for free. Only the people on my email list will get that free companion guide, but it is in pre-launch status on Amazon. So they can just go there. If they're not interested in leaving the review or the companion guide, they can just go there and pre-order.
And so I can link the book on Amazon in the show notes for this. And then what we decided before we started recording was that if you do want to sign up on Terri's email list and get a free copy of the book, you can do so by emailing her. And the email, I believe, is terrikaffiliate@outlook.com. And I'll put that email in the show notes as well. So if you do want to get a free copy of her book coming out, definitely sign up on her email list and then you can read about leadership. Now tell me, who is the best candidate for reading that book? Obviously you said women, people in leadership roles. Is it more than just that?
You know what it is, Tony? It's new. I like new emerging leaders to read a book like this because before the corporate crap starts to fill in for you, like you'll have an opportunity to get this in your mind because the 3 superpowers are a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. I think that's so important. And that's the first section of the book. And then just being able to develop your emotional intelligence, because being a leader, you need some tough skin. And you also need to be able to lead with compassion and empathy and to be more aware of the emotional intelligence that goes behind that, I think is a very crucial part in being a successful leader. And then just knowing how to use your influence. So I'm sure everybody listening could probably think of a person that they've worked with or worked for that used their power in the wrong way. So the last chapter of the book was all about effective influence and how to use it properly in your leadership roles. The emerging leader should be very interested in it, but also maybe someone who's been in leadership for a while and is struggling with all the changes that are going on in the corporate environment now. We're changing. It's becoming a whole different world. And especially with dealing with millennials and Gen Z, like you need to probably upgrade some of your leadership skills And that might be a good book for someone who's been in it for a while and needs to have some new ideas.
What about somebody who's leading a small team, not necessarily in the corporate environment? I'm sure a lot of the same principles apply.
Absolutely. And I even think that if you take these principles and apply them to your personal life, you're going to get some value there too. I coached this one lady, and I'll never forget this because she was having some struggles. And without giving away her information, like one of them was with her husband. And I said, well, you do realize you have influence over him? She said, oh, no, I don't. I'm like, you absolutely do have influence over your husband. We have influence over people in our personal lives. And if you can learn how to harness it, and use it in a good way. Like I would never tell someone to manipulate their husband with their influence. To use it in a good way, a positive way, can really improve your relationship.
Yeah. Again, maybe it comes back to being vulnerable and honest and good communication, and that improves most relationships, I feel like.
Yeah. So all of it, even like the fixed mindset is, I was just born this way and there's nothing I can't change, versus I can always learn new things. I can always learn new skills. You can see how that would help you in your personal life because of the communication portion of it. The person in the marriage that says, this is just the way I am. This is just how I am. This is how I was born. No, that's not true. Because if that were true, I'd still be the girl who grew up in an abusive home, and I could be the victim my whole life. No, you can take in new information and you can use that to grow as a person. I think there's enough of a personal aspect in there that even if you aren't a leader, you would probably get something out of the book. Yeah.
Terri, I just want to point out the fact that I don't know if you've recognized this in yourself, but I hope you've recognized the cycle breaking that you did in your family, because I think that's huge. Because it sounds like your kids have grown up in a very loving, caring atmosphere, even having a teen mom who I'm sure had its challenges in itself. So I love that you did that. And I think you need to give yourself a lot of credit for that. And I hope you recognize that and do give yourself credit for that, because that's huge.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think something in me, whether it's a personality trait or what it is, always believed and still believe to this day that there's always a solution to a challenge. So even now we're building this house and my husband will come to me and he'll tell me something that's not going so well. And I just pause and I just look at him and I give him an opportunity. Okay, there's the problem. But I was like that with my team too. And they would come to me with some struggles or something in the care center. I'd be like, great, we have a great understanding of what the problem is. Now let's start working on the solution. And I think whether it's God or what it is in me that's just always given me that, like, you can't give up. There's going to be a solution to this. No matter how bad it seems in the moment, like there's always a way out. There's always a way forward.
Yeah.
And thank God I had that in me.
Yeah. You've come a long way from your 16-year-old self, for sure. And I don't even know you that well, but just from this conversation, you've come super far, and it sounds like you've grown as a person so much. And I love that you're sharing it with the world too.
Thank you. Let's not pretend though that there hasn't been some moments when imposter syndrome has not kicked in for me, because the book was probably finished. Gosh, it's November now. This year has flown by. I think the book was probably finished somewhere around July. It was probably about a year from this time the process started till the time it was ready. And I just froze and I couldn't move forward with it. And my soul sister and my husband were both like, come on, let's get this book out there for the world.
Yeah.
But and I had all these excuses. And it was just old messaging that was trying to sneak in and say, who do you think you are? Who wants to listen to you? You've been out of the corporate world for years now. But eventually I was able to quiet those noises.
How did you do that? Do you know, or did it just take time?
I do know. I developed a gratitude practice that I do every day. Before I get out of bed in the morning, I have to name 5 things I'm thankful for.
Okay. Do you write them down, or do you just say them to yourself?
I don't, but I would like to start writing them down. That's a really great idea to reflect back on. But I say them in my head, and some days it's tough because, like, when you're in menopause and you've not had a great night's sleep and your body's aching, like, some days are tough. But I always tell people when I talk about it, I'm like, use your senses. If you can't do anything else, just use your 5 senses. I'm grateful that I'm going to get up and drink a cup of delicious coffee. and just whatever it is. I'm grateful I get to see. I'm grateful what it can be, the tiniest things. It doesn't even matter, because when you start your day out feeling grateful, it's almost as if the brain is tricked then into looking for more things to be grateful for. So that's one. So the grateful practice, we get up pretty early, so the sun's not always up when we get up. But the moment I start to see, and I live in a beautiful place where there's mountains all around me. So when I see that sun peeking over the mountains, I look into it and I say, thank you for this day. There will never be another day exactly like today. Help me be a better person today. I'm getting choked up. Help me be a better person today than I was yesterday. That kind of ties into the gratefulness. But meditation, hands down, meditation. And I heard you talking to your friend about this. And I know it's so hard for women. They hear you say, you should meditate. And they're like, yeah, blah, blah. I can't, my brain doesn't stop. And it's true. It's tough. But there are so many resources on YouTube for guided meditations. Mm-hmm. Just find one that you can tolerate listening to their voice. Just start there and just say, I'm only going to commit to this for 5 minutes. And you're sitting there, and then hopefully you can start expanding that 5 minutes. And I meditate every single day, sometimes twice.
Okay.
You know, once about midday, when I start to feel a little slump, it re-energizes me. And then as I'm going to sleep at night, I listen to a hypnosis meditation.
Okay.
You fall asleep real easy. So I think those two things, the anxiety that you can feel in this time of life, and even in our current environment with things we've got going on in the world, like the anxiety is freaking real, right?
Yeah.
It's really real. And I don't think I would have been able to get through some of it without the meditation, because it really does calm you. So yeah. Those are two things I always tell everybody. I feel like a broken record.
No, it's all important. And I've heard it from tons and tons of different people in different walks of life. Those seem to work a lot for a lot of people in different ways. So however it works for you, whether it's journaling your gratitude or just getting up and speaking it in the morning, I think is fine too. And I've also learned about a lot of different ways to meditate or to have that meditative state. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people think of just sitting down and shutting your brain off, which I think is very important. But I think I've heard that like running can be a form of meditating for some people, and just however it is that you can shut your brain off for a little bit and take some deep breaths, I think is important too. So
another thing, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, is tapping. You ever heard of tapping?
Is that like the tapping of your forehead?
Yeah, there's certain points you tap up, you know. I was doing that for a while, and I really liked it. You know how it's just like anything, you get away from certain things after a while. I've gotten away from it a little. But one of my friends mentioned it to me the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about tapping.
I think I've done it once or twice, but I didn't know enough about it I think I had a friend who like guided me through it once, but it wasn't one that stuck necessarily. But
you're right though. There's so many good ways. I used to journal quite a bit. I've gotten away from that a little bit too, but I know I won't stay away from it forever because it is effective. I think we just go through different seasons in our life, and as you said earlier, when you're in your 20s, you got something going on, then in your 30s, you got something else going on. I think when we really start to dial into ourselves and really get to know yourself, that's one of the things I learned from John Maxwell was, in order to grow yourself, you have to know yourself. So you really, like the good, the bad, the ugly. Like there are some things about myself that probably aren't so pretty, that were hard to acknowledge, but they're true and they're there. But when you really get to know yourself and understand that you move through different things, and in different portions of your life, you need different things. Once you get there, like you'll know what you need. You just have to listen to yourself.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I've learned to listen to myself and my body a lot more later in life. I think it comes with some maturity and experiences and stuff. But when you start to pay attention to things, and I recently told my husband, we were talking about just how everybody's trying to better themselves. And he's like, you can't just read a book and fix yourself. Like you got to do more than that. And which is true. But we were talking about it, and I said, I use the analogy of it's like a broken car, right? Like until you know what's broken on it, you don't know how to fix it. You're not going to be able to fix it until you figure out what's wrong with it. Exactly. I feel like it's the same with us. Like until you know why you're doing certain things or why you are the way you are, and dive deep into some of that stuff, then it's hard to fix it. At least for me, it's hard to fix it without knowing the why. So.
Yeah. So what is your husband into personal development too?
Not really, but he's also led a pretty cushy life, I'm not gonna lie.
So funny. It's so funny because if anybody that knew my husband was listening to this, they would not believe this. When I met my husband, I told him I'm a nerd. Like I love books. Like I want to surround
Yeah.
myself with books. I'll never stop wanting to learn new things. And he's this macho. I work out in the field. I'm a worker, blue collar worker. The influence thing that wives have over their husband over the years, like he's picked up on different things and had different trainings at work, and we watch certain television shows, and he's coming around.
I guess I wouldn't say he's not about personal development because he's always trying to be a better person for sure, but there's not a lot in him that seems to require fixing. He had a pretty normal childhood. He's still real close with his parents, and he's gone through the infertility stuff with me, and that's been tough in its own regard, but he can look at it so differently. I think it's not that he's not for personal development. I think it comes easy to him.
Oh, okay, that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, where to a lot of the rest of us, it's not as easy.
Yeah, I love it that we're so different, men and women. I think a lot of times society wants us to be against each other.
Yeah.
I think I think there's a lot we can appreciate about each other if
Well,
we.
and men have had a hard time for years too, in the regard that they're not supposed to express their feelings, right? They've been told they have to suppress their real feelings, and they have to be the man of the house, and they have to be macho, and and they are now trying to learn how to express their feelings in life.
And
So
not only just express their own, but try to understand ours,
yes, yes.
which is
Yeah.
somewhat impossible because sometimes we don't understand our own.
I know. I tell my husband all the time, I'm like, men do not know how good they have it not having to deal with our female hormones.
That's so true. That's so
We
true.
have zero control over it. I know you don't understand that, but I have no control over this right now.
Oh, that's so true. So true.
Oh man. All right, Terry. Well, I'm going to start to close us out here. This has been an amazing conversation. I really
Oh,
enjoyed chatting with you. Do you have any parting words for any of the listeners out there, or last and final thoughts that you want to share with everyone listening?
I do. I would say to a woman, no matter what part of your life you're in, whether you're still in the midst of that parenting and you're losing yourself, or you're empty nest now and you're trying to find yourself, don't give up. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, my purpose has to be grand like Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa. It doesn't have to be that big. It can be something. There was a story on one of my podcasts where I told about this woman who had gone to college, was expected of her from her family to go to college. During college, she worked at a coffee shop, and she really loved that environment, loved getting to know the customers, loved training new staff people. She just loved every aspect of the environment, learning people's names, remembering their orders, like the whole thing. She just got such a charge out of it. She graduates from college. She leaves the coffee shop. She goes and gets her big girl job, quote unquote, and she was miserable. And she ended up going back to work for this coffee chain. I don't know which one it was, this coffee chain. She moved her way up the ladder. She became, but her main job was still to train. Like she loved that aspect of being in that environment. She was happy. I think we shouldn't discount things, even how small they are, that they can still bring us fulfillment in life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great perspective to share with everyone, that it doesn't have to be a huge purpose in life.
It doesn't. But yeah, don't give up. Keep searching for it no matter where you're at in life. Don't give up.
I love that. Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your journey. And again, I'll link the book and any way that you want to connect with listeners, and maybe somebody is listening that wants to work with you as a coach. So we'll put all that information in the show notes if anyone's interested. But yeah,
I enjoyed this so much. I hope you keep doing it. You're great and you make people feel comfortable. So keep doing it. Keep going, girl.
Thank you. I will. If I keep having conversations like this, I definitely will. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.